Hey YouTube, hey everybody. Anybody else who's watching, it doesn't have to be YouTube. It could be anybody. You don't have to identify as YouTube in order to be here. Thanks for coming back to Garfield of the Week. It's Sunday again. It's Sunday, and that means we get to read a new Garfield every Sunday until the sun sets on Garfield. But guess what? It's not this Sunday. This Sunday we got a fresh, good Garfield. And I'm going to read it to you. The title panel is really, really good this week. It's Garfield standing outside in the snow, and there's a snowman with him. And on the snowman's abdomen, or lower part of his body, the lower third, it says Garfield in coal. And then the snowman has a face, but the nose is missing. And it's because it was a carrot. Garfield's eating that carrot. Good title panel. I've spoke at length about title panels, and this is a good one. It's a little joke. It's a little comic in itself. Very good. Moving on to the comic, the meat, the real. Moving on to the jelly in these donuts. The first panel, Garfield is on the table and he's walking right past John. And as he walks past John, some of Garfield's hair falls off. He's shedding. He sheds some hair, and it kind of gathers on John a little bit. And in the next panel, Garfield walks by in the opposite direction, and more Garfield hair comes off, and more Garfield hair lands on John. In the third panel, Garfield walks by again. This time, more Garfield hair falls off, and more Garfield hair gathers on John. In the fourth panel, Garfield walks by again. More hair comes off. More Garfield hair gathers on John. In the next panel, Garfield walks by in the other direction, and more Garfield hair comes off, and more Garfield hair gathers on John. And then in the next panel, Garfield walks by again, and more Garfield hair comes off of Garfield and lands on John. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick today. I ate some bad rigatoni or something. I think the mozzarella was a little off, was a little rotten. I had some rotten mozzarella. So in the sixth panel, Garfield walks by again, and more hair comes off of Garfield, and more hair gathers on John. In the seventh panel, Garfield walks by, this time in the other direction, though. And more hair comes off of Garfield, more Garfield hair. And more Garfield hair gathers on John. In the next panel, the eighth panel, Garfield walks by one more time, just one last time, and more hair comes off of Garfield. And more Garfield hair lands on John. John's getting covered in Garfield hair. In the ninth panel, Garfield walks by one more time. And more Garfield hair comes off of Garfield. And then John is just covered in Garfield hair. It's just all over him. And then in the next panel, this is the 10th panel, Garfield walks by in the other direction this time. Not the same direction from the last panel. More Garfield hair comes off of Garfield, because he's been walking by and hair's been coming off of him this whole time. And more Garfield hair lands on John. John cannot handle it. In the 11th panel, this is the 11th hour, the 11th panel of this Garfield walks by. You got it wrong. He walks by in the other direction, different from last time. And more Garfield hair comes off, and more Garfield hair lands on John, and John is just looking like a Sasquatch, like a Garf Squatch. In the 12th panel, like, this is ridiculous. This is so good. Garfield walks by in the other direction, in the different direction. More hair comes off of Garfield. More hair comes out. How much hair does Garfield have? And it all lands on John. It's all collecting on John. He's like the sun. He's the solar entity in this Garfield universe that's just sucking in all the Garfield hair. We get to the 13th panel. This is panel 13. This is unprecedented in a Sunday comic strip, unless we're talking the 1920s. Garfield walks by in the other direction, okay? Not the direction in the last panel, the different. And then more hair comes off of Garfield. Which hair is he gonna lose? Garfield should be bald by now. He's not. He's a cat. The cats, they shed a lot. The more hair comes off of Garfield, it collects on John. Oh my God. And it keeps, and then I'm serious, I'm not making this up. Garfield walks by again in the other direction. Okay. Going to the right instead of the left. And more hair, more Garfield hair lands on John. John is just covered now. He's going to be cleaning himself for days. I don't know how he's going to get out of this hairy mess. It's getting pretty hairy. Okay. In the 15th panel, you guys, Garfield walks by one more time. I'm just checking to make sure I'm getting it right. And Garfield loses more hair, and more hair lands on John. We get to the last panel, finally. After that, that was a comedic marathon. I couldn't handle that. We get to the last panel, and John is just an orange mass of fuzz. He's got these tiny little eyes that look very mad. And Garfield's looking at him. And Garfield is just happy. And he's got like a little glimmer in his eye. And Garfield ends the comic by saying, "John, is it my imagination? Or are you getting better looking?" He's covered in Garfield. Garfield is so obsessed with himself. He sees something covered in his own hair and he's like, pretty nice. What a great comic today. That was a really, really good one. I loved it. This is easily probably like top 12. I'd say top 12 for Garfield of the Weeks so far. The overarching ideals in this one are definitely not lost on me. I hope they're not lost on you. Again, sorry about my voice today. Got a little sick and then kind of pushed it a little too hard yesterday. So, sometimes we just got to make some sacrifices, don't we? And take some liberties every once in a while. Anyways, thanks for watching Garfield of the Week. Thanks for coming back. I hope you liked this video. If you do, just, remember, you don't have to press any buttons for me or anything. Just watch it. Just watch it. I don't care. Great. Have yourself a good weekend. It's Sunday. Whatever. Have yourself a good weekend. I don't know where you are. You heard the cat.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for